Workout pause.
All right. Good morning. Am I audible?
You're audible.
Representatives perfect. Representatives of the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation, our colleagues from NRF SASTA, our esteemed speakers, members of the scientific communities, ladies and gentlemen, joining us from across South Africa and beyond. It's an absolute privilege to welcome you to this National Science Month dialogue. My name is Bukosi Mashele, and I have the honor of serving as your programs director today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate more than just science. We celebrate possibility because every breakthrough that has ever changed humanity began with one simple question. What if? What if diseases could be prevented? What if darkness could become light? What if technology could connect people across the world? What if equality wasn't just an ideal, but something that science could help us achieve? Ladies and gentlemen, those questions have shaped and continue to shape the world that we live in today. But today, I invite you to ask yourselves one more question. Can science become one of humanity's greatest instruments for justice? Nelson Mandela believed that education was the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. Today, I would like to add something to that thought. Knowledge reveals what is possible. Science turns possibility into reality. When science is guided by human rights, it changes lives. Therefore, today's webinar is about ensuring that innovation serves every child, every woman, every man, every community, and every South African citizen, because science that excludes people is incomplete, but science that uplifts people becomes legacy. So today, I invite you to not simply just listen, but I invite you to imagine. Imagine a South Africa where every child has access to scientific opportunities. Imagine communities where innovation defeats poverty. Imagine technology that protects dignity. Imagine a future where no one is left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mandela's Legacy webinar. Let us begin. You know, there's an old saying that says every great nation is built on two foundations. The first is justice, and the second is knowledge. When those two foundations stand together, societies flourish. Our first speaker will help us understand why constitutional democracy and scientific progress must always walk hand in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Advocate Lufuno Novondwe. Advocate, over to you.
Good morning, Program Director. Good morning, distinguished guests, presenters, officials from the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation, and other agencies of science within the science sector, and everyone who has attended this webinar. I'm here today colleagues to talk to you about my presentation. I will refer it to my presentation because I don't see it on the screen yet, but I will. Oh yes, I see it now. So this is the Mandela vision, science promise, exploring the relationship. Still on, can we still go on page 1? Yes, exploring the relationship between constitutional democracy, human rights, and science as a public good for social transformation. So that is the topic. My name is Lufuno Nevondwe, who will be presenting on this topic. Mandela Day, which is observed annually on his birthday of July 18, is a global call for action, celebrating the legacy of South Africa's first democratically elected president, established by the United Nations. It encourages individuals worldwide to dedicate 67 minutes to community service, representing the 67 years Mandela fought for human rights, equality, and also social justice. Nelson Mandela believed that education, knowledge, equality, and human dignity were foundations of democracy. Science advances these values by solving societal problems, empowering citizens, reducing poverty, improving healthcare, creating opportunities for youth and young people, promoting equality, and supporting democratic governance. My presentation outline, a guest, I will talk about the right to science as a constitutional imperative. And in terms of the key themes, the right to science, human rights and public policy, access to scientific knowledge, constitutional accountability, science for social justice. And I will also end with the court judgments, which has shaped human rights and also our science. The right to science is also incorporated in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa through various sections. And you will remember that the Constitution is the highest law of the land, and any law or conduct inconsistent or repugnant with the Constitution, that law or conduct remain invalid. This right to science find expression in the Bill of Rights, which is Chapter 2 of the Constitution. Science in South Africa is categorized primarily into natural science, physical and mathematical science, social science, and management science. Natural science involves natural, life, and earth sciences. Given its rich biodiversity and geographical landscape, South Africa is globally renowned for these fields: botany and plant science, zoology and ecology, geology, earth science, oceanography, and atmospheric science. Physical science and astronomy includes astronomy and astrophysics, and physics and also chemistry. Physical sciences and astronomy includes astronomy and astrophysics, physics and chemistry also. And applied sciences, health and engineering includes, amongst others, the agricultural science, forensic science, medical and biomedical science, computer and mathematical sciences. Social sciences and humanities includes anthropology, archaeology, and paleontology, and South Africa has some of the most significant archaeological and fossil-rich sites in the world. And for example, if you look at the cradle of humankind, the Mapungubwe cultural landscape, which is the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Management science combines analytical techniques, business strategy, and operational efficiency to improve organizational decision-making, especially in terms of how we run companies, how we implement the corporate governance principles, which are the processes and systems which regulate how the companies are controlled and governed. This entails good leadership, ethical leadership, transparency, and also accountability in terms of leadership, either in the public sector, private sector, non-governmental organization, and all the sectors of the economy. The next slides. Human rights and public policy. Human rights provide the foundational ethical and legal framework for public policy, requiring government to design programs that uphold dignity, equality, and fundamental freedoms. By integrating a human rights-based approach, legislation actively empowers marginalized groups, prevents discrimination, and ensures equitable access to essential services like healthcare, housing, education, water, food, electricity, social security, and property rights. This intersection is deeply enshrined in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which contains a progressive Bill of Rights. And I've already alluded to this Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights is a cornerstone of democracy in South Africa. It enshrines all the rights of our people and affirms the democratic values of human dignity, equality, and freedom, which are the core values of our Constitution. The Bill of Rights compels all organs of state to balance policy with the protection of inherent human dignity, equality, and socio-economic rights. Still on the human rights and public policy, translating these rights into tangible public policy remains an ongoing challenge. For example, severe budget cuts and resource allocation strategies frequently spark intense debate regarding the government fulfillment of its socio-economic obligations. When public services such as clean water, reliable electricity, and social welfare are not distributed equitably, our people rely on oversight institutions like the South African Human Rights Commission or Chapter 9 institutions. These are the Chapter 9 institutions supporting a constitutional democracy. We are in a constitutional democracy to hold the government accountable and demand policy corrections. Go to the next point, which is the access to scientific knowledge. Access to scientific knowledge in South Africa is undergoing a major shift. Driven by our national policies, public-funded research is increasingly required to be freely accessible under the principle of as open as possible, as closed as necessary. South Africa produces highly cited research in Africa and globally, and its latest rankings are very good. Navigating the scientific ecosystem involves several key components: scholarly access, public understanding, and also national research portal. I will move to the constitutional accountability. Constitutional accountability in South Africa is the legally binding obligation of all branches of government, the executive, parliament, and judiciary, to justify their decisions, answer to the public, and act according to the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Under the separation of powers, This is enforced through checks and balances, ensuring no single branch abuses its power. And constitutional accountability is tied directly into three branches of government. The executive is required to answer to the legislature or parliament for service delivery and the proper use of public funds and taxpayers' money. Parliament holds the executive accountable. An independent judiciary ensures that neither of the other two branches violates the Constitution, human rights, or procedural fairness. Ultimately, accountability is upheld through robust, transparent public reporting mechanisms and investigative bodies, such as the Auditor General or the Public Protector, which operate outside the direct control of the governing administration. Next slide. Still on the constitutional accountability. This framework operates on three main pillars, which is the rule of law. And what the rule of law entails is that all laws or conduct inconsistent with the Constitution are invalid, and the state must fulfill its constitutional obligations. Parliamentary oversight, the National Assembly is tasked with scrutinizing executive action, approving budgets, and ensuring government departments deliver on services. And in terms of provincial government, the provincial legislatures are responsible for the parliamentary oversight. When you go to the local government sector, you have councils of various metros and municipalities which ensure that they hold the management of the municipality accountable. When it comes to the independent courts, the judiciary, specifically the Constitutional Court, has the power to invalidate unconstitutional actions and enforce remedial orders against the president or parliament. You might have seen the president of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, when the Constitutional Court judgment was handed recently, which involves the parliament and also the Phala saga, which shows that no one is above the Constitution and the rule of law, including the president. The president is undergoing a court, even now, is trying to halt the impeachment processes, which then talks about his removal as the president of the Republic of South Africa. So there are ongoing court cases which are also happening, which stem or affirm the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary must take their decision without fear, favor, or prejudice. Next slide. Science for social justice. Science for social justice integrates a vigorous scientific research with activism and policy to dismantle systemic inequalities, centered locally at higher education institutions and grounded in South Africa constitutional values. It empowers marginalized communities by ensuring scientific resources and innovations are distributed fairly and benefit society as a whole. The science for social justice rejects historical top-down approaches which have occasionally been used to exploit vulnerable populations in favor of community-led, justice-centered methodologies. Next slide. Science for social justice, key focus areas and frameworks includes public policy and equality. Scientific research must address poverty, equitable health access, and environmental justice. Decolonizing knowledge, moving away from extracting data from communities to working with them. Interdisciplinary healing, it addresses how systematic oppression results in intergenerational trauma, promoting practices like contemplative therapy, and neuroscience to improve well-being. Education, justice-centered teaching methods encourage students to use scientific inquiry to understand and challenge real-world problems in their own neighborhoods, such as climate change and public health crisis. Constitutional Court judgments. This is my last topic. Since its establishment in 1994, South Africa Constitutional Court has delivered landmark judgments that abolish the death penalty, advanced socio-economic rights, establish equality for the LGBTQ plus community, and enforced public accountability. The court has fundamentally reshaped South African law through several pivotal decisions. The case of State versus Makwanyan in 1995. In this case, the court outlawed capital punishment, ruling it cruel, inhuman, and degrading. It anchored the new democracy in the foundational value of Ubuntu. In the case of the Minister of Health versus Treatment Action Campaign, TAC, a landmark socio-economic rights case where the court ordered the government to provide antiretroviral drugs to prevent mother-to-child transmission of HIV. Next slide. The case of the minister, no, it's the same case. The Minister of Home Affairs versus Furi. In this case, the court directed Parliament to legalize same-sex marriage, ensuring equal rights and protection for LGBTQ plus couples under the Constitution. The case of Economic Freedom Fighters versus Speaker of the National Assembly, 2016, where the court ruled that the public protector remedial powers are binding and that President Jacob Zuma failure to comply with her directives regarding the Nkandla upgrades violated his constitutional obligations. Next slide. In the case of Bear versus Magistrate Kaelicha, this case struck down the principle of male primogeniture in customary law, allowing women and children to inherit property, which significantly advanced gender and cultural equality. It also applied to traditional leadership. You might have heard about the case of Mwamitwa, where the late Mwamitwa was inaugurated as the chief of the Mwamitwa, of the Valoi tribe of Mwamitwa. Initially, she was not allowed to become a chief because she was a woman. So this also goes to traditional leadership. The case of Government of the Republic of South Africa versus Krothboom, where the court evaluates whether the state policies and programs are reasonable in scope, comprehensively implemented, and consider the needs of the most vulnerable. The case of Port Elizabeth Municipality versus various occupiers, the court ruled that evictions can only take place after considering all relevant circumstances and must be executed humanely. In the case of Mazibuko versus City of Johannesburg, this case deals with the right of access to water. The court said to the president that judiciary must defer to the government to determine the specific quantums of basic resource as long as delivery measures are reasonable. The next. You have been a great audience. Thank you for listening. Questions and comments. Next.
Thank you so much, Advocate, for that wonderful presentation. We have learned a lot about the intersection of law as well as with science. I only have one question for you. So, Advocate, if Nelson Mandela was sitting in this webinar today, what do you believe he would challenge scientists, policymakers, and ordinary South African citizens to do differently in protecting the constitutional right to science?
You will challenge us a lot. Nelson Mandela was was a human rights lawyer himself. He believed in social justice. He believes in equality. And he will challenge us to say that he will also start with the leadership. Because if you check, in terms of leadership, we have deteriorated. We now lack ethical leadership amongst our leaders. Our leaders are no longer transparent. They are no longer accountable. And we have a high rate of corruption and the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, which you will have fought for it not to be there. Madiba hate corruption because corruption takes away what we need to deliver to our people. Our people needs basic socio-economic rights and so on. And in terms of science, Mandela believes in innovation because I believe that we need science to innovate. We also need science as an enabler in terms of how we must do our things, because everything revolves around science. If you go to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, you have the freedom of trade, freedom of expression. You have many rights there, which then complement the science field. And the other crisis, we have a crisis of water. Our people do not have access to water, and water remains life and a basic human right, because without water, nothing you can do. So we also need scientists in that field to ensure that our people have access to water. The issue is not that the water is not there. Water is there, but it's not going to the people. That is the problem. As much as our dams are in 100% capacity, but our people are still drinking water with animals. I don't think Madiba would have liked that. So there are a lot which we are challenged about, and we need to innovate more, especially in science, in technology, so that it simplifies how we do things every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate. You know, in my line of work, we always say that the show must go on. So I am a little bit under the weather with a bit of a flu, but the show must go on. The show must definitely go on. So I do apologize if my voice breaks in between my links. Have you ever watched a forensic crime series and wondered, how did they know that? How did they know that that DNA will match that person or that person and that person? Whereas me, as Vukosi Mashele, I can barely match my socks in the morning. But that's the incredible precision of forensic science. Behind every fingerprint, every DNA, every piece of evidence is science that really helps us uncover the truth. Our next presentation takes us into the fascinating world of forensic science under the title Forensic Science, Justice, and Human Rights, the Imperatives of Forensic Science in the Modern World. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Rylan Blumenthal.
Good morning to the panel. Thank you for having me. Program Director, superiors, South Africans. It is wonderful to be here on this Science Month on this Saturday morning. We're just sharing the screen. Let's just share the screen here. And then we can begin. Is everything in order, Program Director? May I begin?
Yes, you may.
All right. Okay. So allow me to begin by saying, what can the dead teach the living? I'm Professor Ryan Blumenthal, and when I asked AI for an introduction, I have performed about 13,000 autopsies to date. I'm 52 years old. I've written some good books that became bestsellers. I'm known internationally for my work on lightning and electrocution. I've performed some high-profile forensic investigations, including the Life of Sedimeni tragedy, the Marikana massacre, and I've performed an autopsy on a previous president. I have won awards for science communication, and I'm the presenter of Lightning Pathologist, which I'm sure you've seen on television. Right, the stories I'm going to share with you this morning have been crystallized from the messy, muddy, bloody, smelly, greasy, real hard, loud, buzzing, cooked, charred world of the autopsy. Did I mention smelly? This work is not for everyone. An autopsy is quite ancient. And if you look at the ancient literature, I want to particularly point you to a work from 1247. Uh, Forensics is about 3,000 years old, but if you look at the works written by Song Si, published in 1247, this was compiled as a practical handbook for local magistrates and coroners, and the text aimed to prevent miscarriages of justice by replacing bureaucratic guesswork with physical evidence-based death investigations. And it said in the book, a forensic medical doctor must be serious, conscientious, highly responsible, and must personally examine each dead body or wounded person. The particulars of each case must be recorded in the doctor's own handwriting. No one else is allowed to write the autopsy report. He must not avoid performing an autopsy because he detests the stench of corpses. He must refrain from sitting behind a curtain of incense that masks the stench, or let his subordinates do the autopsy unsupervised, or allow a petty official to write his autopsy report, leaving all the inaccuracies unchecked and uncorrected. So that's from 1247. Look, autopsies are not for everyone. It's a calling. This career is not for everyone, and there are only 80 to 90 of us in the whole of South Africa. And our days are varied. Some days we are up mountains because people like to kill themselves on top of mountains with a view. Some days I'm in caves because sometimes people are murdered and thrown in caves. Some days I'm at mass disasters. For example, this was a luxury train line that overturned, and the world seems very big. And most days I'm behind my microscope where the world is very small, where I'm looking at histology. So we have major duties as forensic pathologists. We're part of a chain, but we help determine the cause and manner of death. We help identify the deceased if unknown. We collect evidence from the body. We document injuries or the lack of them. We work out how these injuries occurred. We look for underlying natural disease. We attend the scene of crime. We go to court and we provide expert testimony. These are the tools of our trade. Some of us are lucky and we have X-ray machines. Now, there are two types of autopsies: autopsies of documentation and autopsies of discovery. Sometimes we go in just to military document what happened. So if someone dies under anesthetic, we're there to document military and mercenary what happened. And sometimes we go in by the grace of God. We go in, someone just drops dead at rest or exertion. We don't know why they died. And we go in, this is an autopsy of discovery. We never know what we're going to find. So this is the mortuary, and there are many lessons to be learned from the autopsy table. Unnecessary deaths can be prevented, lives can be saved, and we should never have the same type of death twice. That would be a massive step for our country. We should never see the same type of death twice. So we have to deal with highly complex issues of emotional issues, questions of law and religion, and the interface between science and human variables. In the final analysis, we must render our best judgment to ensure that the citizens, families, and agencies are served and helped and are satisfied with our service. And we don't just help crime, we safeguard the community. Look, we bring the accused to justice, we help exonerate the innocent, we give closure to the next of kin. Yes, this takes its emotional toll on us. It can affect a person's psyche, but the results are very rewarding. And would we all do this again? Yes, we would do this again in a heartbeat. Now, before I start with my presentation, I want to give you 3 quotes from one of my heroes, Lester Adelson, who was born in 1914 and died in 2006. He said, in the autopsy room, we see people with their naked bodies. When families see us, we see their guilt, grief, greed. We see families with their naked souls. Lester Adelson said, regardless of color, race, sex, or the shape of your nose, Everyone has the same red-blooded autopsy, and tears shed for a lost loved one are equally salty. We see what connects us, not what separates us. We are all humans. And you don't become hardened to death, you become more sensitive to it. Now, what kills you? I mean, this is an important lecture today. So, what is it that kills you? The smallest things can kill you. A pimple on your nose can kill you. I've seen people die from fiddling with a pimple on your nose because the nose sits in what's known as the death triangle. All the veins drain to your cavernous sinus. And I've seen people die from meningitis and cavernous sinus thrombosis. So, the smallest things can kill you. But what really does kill us? So, I call it the law of threes. 3 minutes without air will kill you. 3 days without water will kill you. 3 weeks without food will kill you. And 3 years without a relationship may kill you. That is just some humor, people. I think you'll survive longer than 3 years. But creatures great and small can kill you. We live in South Africa. There's large creatures here that can kill you. The big five: elephants, leopards, lions, buffalo. Um, but also small creatures can kill you. I saw a man, a 42-year-old male, who was stung on the top of his foot by this little wasp, and this wasp killed him. This wasp traveled more in death than in life. We wanted to find out what species of wasp this was. It traveled all the way from Pretoria to Bloemfontein and back, and we worked out it's a very rare wasp of the species Hymenoptera, and this raised the blood pressure of the victim, and he had a heart attack. This is his coronary artery. He had a thrombotic occlusion of his coronary artery. It's called Conus syndrome, caused by this little wasp. So, what can you hope to learn from a forensic pathologist? Well, we are very keen attention to detail people. We've got a systemic approach. We document everything. We work with other experts we do not know at all. And we just want to make the world a safer and a better place to live, as Madiba wanted. So just to show you that we're public health pathologists, I want to mention one of my other heroes, a guy called Gary Simmons. In 1992, he was a forensic pathologist, and he published a paper of a 26-month-old girl who accidentally pushed the electric power car window button on the car and got strangulated and died. And by publishing this article, he highlighted the public health hazard of electric power car windows. And nowadays, most electric power car windows have a cut-out mechanism if a body part gets stuck between the window and the body of the car. And this is your friendly forensic pathologist that picked this up. So every modern society has some kind of death investigation system, and therefore we like to see ourselves as community and public safety pathologists. Because no matter what activities humans get up to, things will go wrong, and forensic pathologists will be expected to answer why and what might have been done to prevent needless deaths. So without even realizing this, these are the campaigns internationally that forensic pathologists have helped develop. The Back to Sleep campaign. If you have a baby, you want to put them to sleep on their back. You can trust me on this. If you put them to sleep face down, they die. This is what's known as SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. So the Back to Sleep campaign was a worldwide campaign. You put your babies to sleep on their back. When thunder roars, go indoors. The lighting community came up with this campaign. Trust me, when thunder roars, go indoors. You're safer indoors than outdoors. A lot of the tobacco control campaigns came from the autopsy table, and even the vaping stuff is now coming out from the autopsy table. You know, a cigarette has a beginning and an end, so we know how much dosage of tobacco you're inhaling, and therefore we can work out your history. However, a vape is a bottomless pit of who knows what you're inhaling, and we're starting to see things called EVALI, which is e-cigarette and vape-induced lung injury. So vaping is not as innocent as you think it is. A lot of the HIV/AIDS stuff came from the autopsy table. A lot of the traffic stuff came from the autopsy table, and a lot of the vaccine stuff came from the autopsy table. We see ourselves as the final safety net for society because we need to know what's killing us. So there are many campaigns around the world. If you drive around the USA, you may see some billboards: lightning kills, play it safe. And in America, even this bridge, Golden Gate National Bridge, they've had 2,500 people jump off this bridge to unalive themselves. And only 2 years ago, October, they decided to build a safety net. And now when people jump off the bridge, they merely fracture their ankles. However, lives are saved. So what can I tell you from the autopsy table? I don't think it's safe to be out after midnight in South Africa. A lot of my dockets, I see that a lot of the accidents and homicides happen after midnight. So you want to maybe tell your kids not to be out after midnight. Some of the strangest things I've seen in the body. Well, one of the strangest things I've ever seen was a South African that died in the Central African region in an airplane crash and was sent back to South Africa in a steel coffin covered in 100% formalin in a wooden coffin with steel screws. And when we opened the steel coffin, the formalin almost volatilized. So we opened it outside and we were pouring the formalin off into a waste container bucket. And when we were pouring the formalin off, I noticed some wire sticking out of the chest. So we always x-ray the bodies to find out what this wire was. And this happened to be a giant African rat that was in the thorax, and that wire was the tail of the rat. So this rat obviously walked into the body after death, and then the body swelled up around it, leaving the tail of the rat exposed, because you never know what you're going to find inside a body. If you open a body, it's by the grace of God. There could be anything inside a body, fully cocked and loaded weapons, knives, needles. You never know what you're going to find. So I'm also always looking for world records. So the longest appendix ever found in the world was 26 centimeters long. This was a 72-year-old Croatian man. And just the other day, I found an appendix at autopsy of 24.5 centimeters long. So we were very close to winning a world record here in South Africa. So you've got to think like a medical detective. You've got to not just see, you've got to observe. And this has come a long way through Paul Kirk and Edmund Locard. It's called contact theory. So wherever someone contacts something, it leaves a trace. And we catch murderers with trace evidence. So if we find a footprint in your yard, we can say that that footprint came from that shoe, and then they must explain how that shoe print got in your yard. But contact depends on three things: intensity, duration, and nature of contact. How hard, how long, and what kind of contact. And contact theory works for everything from if you go with glitter makeup into a wedding, that glitter at the end of the wedding will be on every single guest. So too with tuberculosis. You don't just catch tuberculosis. It depends on intensity, duration, and nature of contact. How hard, how long, and what kind of contact you have with someone with tuberculosis. So every contact leaves a trace, and it even works with ideas. You don't just get a new idea. It depends on the intensity, duration, and nature of contact with that idea. So I'm not a fan of glitter. And let me tell you, I've seen glitter in the gastrointestinal tract. So I'm cutting open the intestines, and what do I see? Glitter makeup. So every contact leaves a trace. So trace evidence could be anything, could be soil, dust, pollen, pieces of paint. And this is how we catch murderers, because every contact leaves a trace. And any single case can be murder. And we always got a high suspicion in South Africa, could this be a murder or not? Because we want to catch murderers. And any case could have toxicology on board, because whatever happens, there could be alcohol or drugs on board. And every opportunity is an opportunity to learn and to make the world a better place. So let me give you a quick snapshot of South Africa at this particular point in time, because I still think I've got some time here. So what is the situation in South Africa? So in America, a forensic pathologist is known as a medical examiner, and they're not allowed to perform more than 250 autopsies per person per year. In South Africa, the forensic textbooks were written in 1988, and there's big population growth predicted within the next 15 years in Southern and Eastern Africa. So you can see this is Crossroads outside Cape Town in 2011. This is Crossroads in Cape Town in 2013, Crossroads in Cape Town 2015, and Crossroads in Cape Town 2017. So we've got some overpopulation happening. When the textbooks were written in 1988, there were 35.2 million people in South Africa. The population now, according to Worldometer, is 65 million people. That means we've had 30 million people enter South Africa within the last 38 years. 30 million extra people in South Africa in the last 38 years. And if we look at the situation in South Africa, we've got about 65 million people. Every year in South Africa, we lose about 500 to 600,000 people from natural causes. Natural causes, we don't do autopsies on natural cause cases. These are HIV, AIDS, TB, strokes, These people just get buried. We're not interested about those kind of cases as forensics. But 10% of those cases are unnatural cases. These are deaths that are medical legal cases. This is where there's interplay of the law and medicine. And every year in South Africa, we have about 70,000 unnatural deaths. That means South Africa has about 70,000 autopsies per year. And of those 70,000 autopsies every year in South Africa, 25,000 are homicides. That means 25,000 are murders. About 15 to 20,000 are road traffic accidents, and about 10,000 are suicides. So take a look at this, please. We've got more homicides than road traffic accidents and suicides. There are only 80 to 90 registered health profession council forensic pathologists practicing in South Africa. And each of us are performing between 400 to 600 autopsies per person per year. That is extreme. In America, a forensic pathologist is not allowed to perform more than 250 autopsies per person per year. In some jurisdictions, 350 persons per year. So we are working very hard here in South Africa. Now, I don't know if any of you play the lottery, but before I get to that, I just want to say that these forensic stats reflect what's happening in our society. It mirrors our social, political, and economic conditions. For example, without leaving the mortuary, I can tell you what's happening with firearms in South Africa. Without leaving my mortuary, I can tell you what's happening with drugs. I can tell you if a new and emergent drug or disease has entered my neighborhood. So it serves as society's silent witness. And I don't want to boast, but we in South Africa come first, second, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 17th place as some of the most dangerous cities in the world. So if you do play the lottery, here is a stat for you today. The chances of you dying an unnatural death on the way to buy your lottery ticket is greater than you winning the lottery. May I repeat that? The chances of you dying an unnatural death on the way to buy a lottery ticket is greater than you winning the lottery. The chances of you having an accident is greater than you winning the lottery statistically in South Africa. And I've done the stats for all the major lotteries in South Africa on this slide. So what does this feel like from my side, doing autopsies every single day? It feels like a lifetime of bearing first-hand witness to, on behalf of everyone, courts, relatives, public society, of man's inhumanity to man. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are many positive pronouncements to be made. There are new developments. There's technology. There's been extraordinary progress in recent years that's enabled our judicial system to become faster and more efficient. And now decisions are much more scientifically grounded. We've got drones now that fly into death scenes. We've got new facial recognition software. We've got laboratories on a chip. So if we come to a death scene and we see blood, we can scoop it up and we can say that the owner of this blood has got blonde hair and blue eyes. You can kill someone with your cell phone nowadays. With a cell phone, not by throwing it at them. You can hack medical devices. So now people have to make hack-proof medical devices. Someone could be on an insulin drip and they can hack it and give you an overdose of insulin. So now murder's become a global situation. You can kill someone 6 months ago on the other side of the planet with your cell phone. So we're living in a strange and dangerous new world. A crime scene is much bigger than just the physical crime scene. It's now a sphere of investigation. There's no more time and space to a crime. And now we live in the days of artificial intelligence and AGI is coming and ASI is coming. So we're going to be living in a very strange new world. Our doctors don't even cure the sick anymore. Our doctors are upgrading the healthy. So we're not curing the sick. Our doctors are upgrading the healthy. And for an example, a woman can have the gene for breast cancer. She does not have breast cancer. She has the gene for breast cancer. And doctors will now do a prophylactic mastectomy and bilateral oophorectomy and hysterectomy so that her risks for breast cancer decrease. So you've got a totally healthy person being operated on where they remove the breasts and the internal organs so she can stop getting cancer. So we are now upgrading the healthy. And even in our institute, for some of our death scenes, we've got mobile quadruped agile robots that go to death scenes. So if ever we, God forbid, have a seriously dangerous scene like a chemical or fire or radioactive, we can save our lives by sending in a robot which has different payloads on its back, for gas detection and GPS and video and sound. So we can send it, for example, into a hanging scene, and our robotic dog will be able to analyze what happens, thereby saving lives. So I'm going to end off my presentation by giving 20 hard truths. This is a strong argument why our government must invest in forensics, because it will, at the end of the day, serve government. So here comes 20 hard, fast facts that every society needs to know about forensic science, and I'm going to deliver them hard and fast. And in the spirit of Nelson Mandela's legacy, forensic science is presented not merely as a tool for investigating death, but as a pillar of our civilization, public health, justice, and human rights. So without forensic science, murder becomes easier. Every murderer benefits when deaths are not properly investigated. A competent forensic system increases the likelihood that perpetrators are identified, prosecuted, and convicted. The certainty of detection is one of the strongest deterrents to violent crime. Truth, a society that cannot investigate deaths cannot prevent deaths. 2, the dead do not speak for themselves. The forensic pathologist is often the final advocate for a deceased person. Victims of homicide, abuse, neglect, torture, femicide, child abuse, elder abuse, and medical negligence frequently rely on forensic experts to reveal what really happened. Truth, without forensic science, the most vulnerable members of our society will lose their voice. 3, justice is impossible without evidence. Opinions do not convict people, evidence does. Courts require objective scientific evidence to distinguish fact from speculation. Truth, the rule of law depends on forensic science. 4, wrongful convictions increase when forensic systems are weak. Poor investigations do not only allow guilty people to escape, they also place innocent people at risk. A strong forensic system protects the innocent as much as it identifies the guilty. Truth, good forensic science protects everyone, including those accused of crimes. 5, every unexplained death is a public health question. Deaths are not only criminal justice events, they are sources of health intelligence. Forensic investigations identify emerging diseases, poisoning outbreaks, environmental hazards, workplace risks, transportation dangers, and patterns of violence. Truth, a mortuary is also a public health observatory. 6, you cannot manage what you do not measure. Governments need accurate mortality data to make good decisions. If causes of death are wrong, public policy is wrong. Every national development plan is only as good as the death statistics on which it relies. 7, disasters expose the strengths or weaknesses of a nation's forensic capacity. Sadly, mass fatalities from transport accidents, natural disasters, fires, pandemics, terrorism, and lightning disasters require forensic expertise. Families deserve identification, answers, and dignity. Truth, a country's forensic system is tested most severely when tragedy strikes. And unfortunately, it always takes a tragedy to realize how well funded and how good your forensic system is. 8, this is human rights. Human rights do not end at death. International law increasingly recognizes the rights of the dead and their families. Proper death investigation protects dignity, identifies abuses, documents atrocities, and prevents concealment of wrongdoing. Truth, human rights begin in life but extend beyond death. 9, trust in government depends on trust in investigations. When deaths are poorly investigated, public confidence erodes. People lose faith in police, courts, health systems, and government institutions. Truth, public trust is built on transparency, and transparency depends on credible forensic investigation. 10, a nation reveals its values by how it treats its dead. Roads, buildings, and technology are important, but civilization is ultimately measured by how society treats people who can no longer defend themselves. The dead deserve identification, investigation, dignity, and truth. Truth, the quality of a nation's forensic services is a reflection of its commitment to justice, science, and humanity. 11, the dead still have something to say. Every person on my autopsy table has one final story to tell, and our job is simply to listen. Forensic science is not about death, it's about discovering the truth. Forensic science gives a voice to those who no longer have one. So forensics is essential. It's not a luxury for wealthy nations. It is an essential infrastructure for any society that values truth, justice, public safety, public health, and human dignity. Show me how a nation investigates its dead, and I'll show you how seriously it takes the living. I was recently in Bulgaria. Take a look at this autopsy table. This autopsy table has been functional since 1919. This really impressed me. Just look at this autopsy table made out of solid granite. Check those grooves. I was totally blown away by this autopsy table. 12. Attention to detail is non-negotiable. The tiniest details can help solve the biggest mysteries. Every autopsy is a lesson for the living. Hundreds of new dangerous drugs will be created by chemical science within the next 5 years. We have a youth culture in an age of anxiety approaching incoherence. The autopsy will tell us of the new synthetic drugs threatening life. Truth, the dead teach us how to protect the living. 14. Forensic science saves lives. It actively prevents future deaths. Seatbelts, child safety, product recalls, safer buildings, violence prevention, public health surveillance. One properly investigated death may prevent hundreds of more deaths. 15. Science has no bias. We do not trend in forensics. Our people lying on our table may have medical aid, may not have medical aid. They may be rich, poor, young, old. They may be a politician. They may be a criminal, a professor, a laborer, a scientist, anybody. We do the autopsy exactly the same. If it's a very, very important person, we may do it a bit slower, but the protocols are exactly the same. Truth is independent of your status. 16. Curiosity is the beginning of every discovery. Every discovery begins with asking why. Why is the essence of good science? Why is this happening? Why did this person die? 17. Africa can lead the world. Too often we believe that innovation comes out of Europe, America, China, or Japan. Yet, I know this may sound egotistical, but many of my Lightning publications and our Lightning team publications have become internationally recognized, and research conducted in South Africa, specifically in Lightning, has influenced international understanding. World-class science has come and can come out of Africa. Sorry, there's a photo of Lightning. 18, the future of forensic science. We are entering a brave new world. AI is coming. Birdtopsy is coming. 3D reconstruction of bodies. You cannot believe the technology that's coming. Photogrammetry, genomics, digital pathology, machine learning, drone mapping, portable imaging. Look, at the end of the day, technology can never replace critical thinking. And at the bottom line remains the scientist. And we need to be a gatekeeper. So we can use all these tools. However, the scientist has to remain there. 19, science is a public service. Forensic science serves, and these are our clients, families, courts, governments, police, healthcare, education, human rights. Science exists to improve all our rights. We need to leave a legacy. The next great discovery may come from someone watching this webinar. I'm here today on Nelson Mandela Day to encourage curiosity for our listeners, to help push integrity, hard work, and compassion. Today's audience may contain tomorrow's scientists. So in closing, for nearly 3 decades, 13,000 autopsies, I've worked among the dead. People ask me whether it's depressing. My answer is no, because every day the dead remind me how precious life really is. Science is not about microscopes. It's not about laboratories. It's about our search for truth. And if we are courageous enough to seek truth, even when it is difficult, we will build safer communities, stronger justice systems, better healthcare, and a better future for all South Africans, which was Mandela's dream. I believe that autopsies can help create a better world. The dead do teach the living. The question is whether we are prepared to listen. My tagline for today is science in service of society. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that presentation. Prof, I actually just have 2 questions for you. The first one is, every single month I buy a brand new pair of socks, but somehow I keep on losing them. I end up wearing socks from 2004. So is there like a forensic pathology methodology that I can deploy to investigate this?
Well, the fact that you've asked the question shows a good start. So
Yeah,
you're asking the right questions, and that is all it's about. So you've realized there's a problem, and now we need to solve this. And
please help me.
that is how good science starts. First, identify the
Yeah.
problem, and then solve it.
Yeah, no, I'm tired of buying socks, eh? But Prof, science really gives us evidence, but public trust gives that evidence meaning. So how do we ensure that scientific integrity remains at the heart of forensic investigation in an age of rapidly advancing technology?
All right. Look, I'm a fan of merit, intelligence, and excellence. So we need to get back to merit. We need good science, uh, intelligent people that are hired for excellence. And by putting the best people in these places, it will naturally emerge. I can assure you. You want merit, intelligence, and excellence. That is what will solve the day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that presentation, Prof. Really appreciate it. Some of the greatest discoveries in history happened because somebody looked at a problem in a different way. And that is the beauty of diversity. Now, psychologists, they call it neurodiversity. So different minds, different perspectives, better solutions. So our next presentation speaks to exactly that, and it is titled The Power of Diversity. Science Doesn't Know Any Borders. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Prof. Tulio de Oliveira. Prof, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be with you today in Nelson Mandela Day, celebrating the Science Month in South Africa. And it is really special, yeah, to be talking about how science, human rights, and the power of diversity can really make us more competitive. Yeah. So my name is Tulio de Oliveira. Yeah, I am a professor at both Stellenbosch University and University of KwaZulu-Natal. And I direct two research institutes that deals with epidemic, the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation, and the KwaZulu-Natal Research Innovation and Sequencing Platform. So today I will not have so many lessons as the previous speakers, not 20. Yeah, I have to you three main lessons. That unfortunately, the first is that human rights it's decreasing in the world. Yeah, and I will give you some examples across the world. But that if you bring back human rights and increase the power of diversity, we can do much better science that end up have a big impact. So let's start with the first part. Yeah. Unfortunately, the world is becoming more conservative, discriminative, and xenophobic. Yeah. So just here is a picture of a travel ban that was signed by a president banning most of the Muslim countries to enter the country. And that is a very large number of countries that now, because believe in a different religious, cannot go to a second country. Yeah. And this, it is not only for people entering countries, but also expelling people that sometimes have been living for decades, that have built lives, that have built community, and that have built innovations in certain countries. Yeah. And that's not only in America, it is also in Europe, the United Kingdom. It is becoming more conservative, discriminative, and xenophobic. Yeah. So recently they decided to leave the European Union to great detriment of their own economy. And surprisingly, since they left the Union, they have an increase on immigration, which then generate again higher anger, higher discriminative. So we are now all around the world of people asking, don't you like it? Go home. Why are you coming to my country? We had even in Brazil, we have Brazil also becoming more conservative, discriminative, and xenophobic. That's a very shocking quote recently from a previous president, which say enough of giving means for more and more couples to bring people who do not have the minimum condition to be a citizen in the future. And here he was talking against discrimination against African descendants and Brazilian indigenous people. And indigenous people were the first nation, were much before people arrived to colonize in Brazil. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is a process that is happening everywhere in the world, and that South Africa, which is known as the Arabian nation, is not being absent. As you are aware, we are also become more conservative, discriminative, and xenophobic. Yeah. And I know that this photo is shocking, but this is unfortunately the reality. Yeah. This is a Mozambican father of three who lived in South Africa, Ernest Mambuavi, which stabbed and burned alive in Boksburg. This we are talking about close to 20 years ago when he was living with his belongings and family. And unfortunately, that is coming back again. Yeah. People, it is fighting with sometimes losing the human rights. Yeah. And that has been repeated in the whole world for the past decades. And that's something that we have to stand back. We have to stand back and fight against that because this can be changed. Yeah. So this is the site from Nelson Mandela. Our struggle for freedom and justice was a collective effort. Was not only South Africans that fight for our own freedom, was a global effort. It was rounded in the neighboring countries. Yeah, it was supported by many nationalities, and it is in our hands to create a better world for all who live in it. Yeah. And this can be changed, and we have to go back to our natural state, yeah, because no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion or where he comes from, yeah. And people is learning to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than is the opposite. And that's what I'm gonna maybe highlight in my talk. Yeah, that if we embrace human rights, if we embrace inclusivity and diversity, is not only good for the heart, as Nelson Mandela highlight, but is very good for science. Is very good for science advancement. Yeah. I'm gonna be cited a number of very high impact journals. Yeah, these mean like that's the what we use the scientists to publish what's the top science that really show very clear that when you have more collaborators, when you work together with people from other countries in research across the world, you increase the impact of the research. That's where you come, that's where you find new cure from diseases. That's where you find new technology that improve lives. Yeah. So this graphic show, very clear of multiple countries. In the case they are analyzing the United States and the United Kingdom, that when you have more than authors from multiple countries, you're gonna have an increase on the impact of your publications. And that statistic significant. When you have only people from one country that we call domestic versus when you have international people working together, you have a clear and measured impact independent of which analysis you use across the years. And then once we put that diversity together, when again citing the same journal, Nature is the top scientific journal of the field, when you begin to be inclusive, teams get a competitive edge in science, and they can begin to solve multiple questions. Yeah. So here is a very simple example. They were trying to solve one problem that happened a lot in New Zealand and Micronesia. I'm gonna go around the world. Yeah, start in the UK and the US. Now in Micronesia, where people would have die of in the water, and then they started using the knowledge, the local knowledge, in the case the Maori knowledge of sailing, to try to devise ways how they can better get water safety. And what they did is to look that not only from the Maori side, and this we are here in the gray lines here, yeah. So that you go back and forward. But when we start bringing many different groups, yeah, from different knowledge, you can begin to see a problem from different aspects, and then you could derive a much better solution. Just highlighting, when you start bringing unconventional work that blended, in that case, Western, what you call a Northern Hemisphere or Maori research methods, and bring audience around the world, they could find a much better solution. Yeah. And then when they bring not only people from across the world, but also when they bring young people together with professors and older people, what they found is that each time that you increase the diversity of the group, yeah, you achieve a better community participation and often have a better benefit on solving a big problem. Yeah. And some places did that in purpose. One of the top new institutes in the world in Japan, it's called the Okinawa Institute for Science and Technology. A graduate university was recently created with a borderless approach. And when they start that, they decide to bring some heavy hitter Nobel laureates, include South African Sidney Brenner, Thorsten Wilson, Japanese Nobel laureates, to start thinking, how can we set ground rules that we can create research centers that bring international diversity from the beginning? And they set up quite clear, at least 50% of the researchers at every level. This means faculty members, postdoctoral researchers, doctoral students, and students must be born outside Japan. And they use one language, English, because it was easily to communicate it. And this institute, it's only 6 years old, and it grew to be one of the top Japanese research institutes and one of the top 100 institutes in the world. And the founders encourage diversity of all types: ethnic, gender, disciplinary, and academic background. There was a commitment to diversity and the expectation that this would not only be nice, but that would great success. And they succeed. They solve many large programs. They got very heavy impact researchers. Since then, many groups are looking at from multiple angles. Yeah, if you can start thinking about diversity and human rights from the beginning, what we will do. So large data analysis now is spanning decades. Yeah, what they highlighted is that if you have multiple authors from multiple countries, you have what you call impact premiums, a relative bump in the average citation rates with when all authors were from one country. And they did that by multiple groups by analyzing millions of publications. And the results was very, very clear. Again, without taking a very scientific, I'm showing 4 regression lines here that all show in the y-axis is the average impact of the result with 60 higher, 0 lower, and in the x-axis different diversity measurements. And what was clear that across over a million of papers, about 24 academics, few different disciplines, was quite clear Each time that you increase diversity, main ethnic diversity, bring people from different race, different culture, or different age, or different genders, or different affiliation, come from different place, you have a very clear increase on the impact of science. And that was quite clear. Each time that you have a high group diversity, and here is represented by different colors, yeah, we have orange, green, brown, yeah, and a high individual diversity, this means age, gender, and different backgrounds, yeah, you have an increase on the average result and the average impact of the paper. And that was clear across all different. And in the same way, unfortunately, when you have a very low diversity, when you have research groups that are only one nationality or one race or one background, you had a much, much lower impact factor. And that's quite important for South Africa. And that's quite important for the world. And how they explain that, that's when you come with, in science, we call the aha moments, yeah, when it means because you have people looking ideas from multiple areas, yeah, a lot of time you can get the solution together, yeah. So really highlighting that a multiracial, a multi-gendered group of research put the heads together and they can make surprising discovery. So what we need is a group of very different kind of people look at the same data from different perspectives to solve some of our biggest problems. Yeah. Just a quick example on our own team. Yeah. So here is our team that's just covering a piece that came in the New York Times. Yeah. I'm in the Nelson Mandela School of Medicine in Durban before I moved to Stellenbosch University, that we did major discoveries during the Omicron and during the COVID pandemic. We discovered most of the variants in the world. South Africa guided the world on the development of vaccine on clinical trial. And our team, in the top 10 people, we had people from Brazil and Brazilian and also South African. We had people from South Africa from Indian background, yeah, Dr. Jennifer and Dr. Sureshni. You have South African Zulus. We have South African white Africans person. We have one key member that was a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo that just completed his PhD, a top scientist that come from Mauritius, from Uganda, and from Scotland. So this is one of the reasons why we could do so well during the pandemic, having this very diverse group looking together at one big question. So I just have another 3 minutes to finish. But what is very important when we bring diversity, that we bring diversity and that we build science that serve the community. Yeah. So the goal of creating science that will better serve the needs of the local community, but a lot of time to grieve and to solve the needs of a local community, yeah, we need the solutions coming from a diverse community of multiple researchers, that then we can reflect the diversity that comes outside the ivory tower. Yeah. In one of the key books that we call about by Linda Swan-Smith in the colonizing methodologies, we argue that indigenous communities that has been researched now have to become researchers who set the agenda, but they also have to collaborate with a large number of groups. Yeah. And it's not about lowering standards for indigenous students or African students to enter academic career, which is a frequent argument from critics of such programs, but it is, on the contrary, that is building academic excellence. Yeah. And that because that's what our community deserves. Yeah. We deserve the best people come from the best countries in the world, yeah, to work with them to solve of the big problem. And I would like to argue today that what we need to do in South Africa is to become even more welcome to African researchers and international scientists, and not less, because they can help to solve our biggest problems. Yeah. And that can be very important. This is a recent article in the New York Times, and I started talking about the United States. In the x-axis is the year, the y-axis in number of international students. As the United States decreased the number of international students that come from Africa, some countries very extreme, such as Nigeria and Ghana. Yeah, and these are top students. These are students that were contributing to the United States to be one of the powerhouse. South Africa should take advantage. So we should take advantage of that. Instead of increasing xenophobia in science, we have to welcome, because together will be able to solve our biggest problems. Yeah. So conclusions. So more investigators should follow the lead of inclusive labs because the payoff scientific impact is real and substantial. People need to go beyond the comfort zones because there is a measurable benefit in the heart and on science. We have to increase diversity in science, to have diversity, to increase impact, to increase funding, to train more people. And just to finish my last picture, which I believe that is very important in this age of xenophobia. Yeah, that's what love is about. Yeah. One, our president Nelson Mandela, yeah, and Graça Machel, a South African and a Mozambique. And I think that we have to heal through science this what is happening now in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that wonderful presentation. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I would like for us to unmute our mics for a second and clap our hands for Prof because he was awarded the Order of Mapungubwe in gold by the President of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, on the 19th of May 2026 for his exceptional scientific leadership and groundbreaking genomic surveillance around COVID. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give Prof a round of applause for that. Congratulations, Prof. We are honored to have you in our presence. I just have one question for you, Prof. You know, your work has united scientists across continents. In your experience, what is the
Yes, yeah, I couldn't hear you for a minute. Yeah, if you can repeat your
was
question.
was I muted?
It's okay. It was a small technical thing, but I heard the beginning of your question. Yeah.
The beginning of my question. So I was asking that, you know, your work has united scientists across the continents. So in your experience, what is the greatest lesson that the scientific community can teach the world about collaboration?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I think and the previous speaker, also highlight that. Yeah, many people don't realize, but South Africa really punch above the weight in science. Yeah, we are really doing very well in every scientific rank in the world. Yeah, and that one of the biggest reasons for that, yeah, is that we have top universities. Yeah, with great teaching, but in the last few years, we have increased a lot the diversity of our population and students. Yeah. And some places are quite magic. I'm sitting here at Stellenbosch University that a few decades ago, I worked with Stellenbosch for 20 years, yeah, was very monoculture. You had mostly one race. And now 60% of our students, yeah, what come from considered to be South African Black students. And the excitement and the impact of people coming from different backgrounds, yeah, talking together to answer a question. And that's something that we have to treasure. And we have to treasure the diversity, we shouldn't be treasuring that we get to 100% of one ethical group, yeah, or racial group. We have to continue getting that diversity. Universities traditionally a place that we come with big breakthroughs, a place that we take really serious human rights, a place that we can work together to solve big problems. And we should take that. And as universities in South Africa, we should also embrace our African scientists, yeah, in the same way that they embrace us in South Africa when we had the worst time of the history during the apartheid years, yeah. And I know that's difficult because in the whole world it is increasing this fight against immigrants, but through science and through diversity, that's how we solve some of our big problems, and that's how we unite our people, and that's how we can try to solve some of our big social unemployment and economical and health problems. Thank you.
You know, Prof, at the end of the day, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And there's an African proverb that I love, and it says that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that really speaks to the power of collaboration. So we need each other as humanity to progress the state of the world and make those groundbreaking scientific discoveries through collaboration. And once again, Prof, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations for being awarded the Order of Mapungubwe in gold by the president. That's a huge, huge, huge accolade. Congratulations. We're proud of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much for being this special day to celebrate Mandela legacy in the National Science Month. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Prof. You know, I often say that talent is universal, but opportunities sometimes are not universal. One of our greatest responsibilities is making sure that brilliance is never limited by gender, geography, or even circumstances. So our next speaker will unpack the importance of advancing gender equality, and she goes by the name of Dr. Thembelihle Bongwane. Doctor, over to you.
Good. I was still on morning. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Program Director. And in the spirit of advancing gender equality, I just have one special announcement or disclaimer to make. I am a mother. I'm a mother who's taken time. The weekend is usually for my children, and it terrifies me knowing that I will be working through my segment and they are in the same roof as me. You don't know how many times they've come to just ask for tiny little things, but those are the realities, especially faced by women. It was suggested in the beginning that we do, for the sake of preserving bandwidth, that we do switch off the video once we start sharing our work. So do not think that I've disappeared. I will switch off the camera. Also, it helps me to disguise my lisp. Sometimes I fear that people pay more attention to me biting my tongue more than listening to what I'm saying. Let's see. Are we there?
Not yet, Doc.
Okay, my slide is there. Are you seeing anything?
There we go. Yeah, we're good now.
Sure, thank you. How do I now switch off my video? Okay, it seems it doesn't want to switch off. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning to my fellow panelists. distinguished guests, colleagues, students, and everyone that is joining us here today online. My name is Tembelihle Bongwana. My speciality is in women and gender studies. I think most speakers, and in spirit of the commemoration of today, we have borrowed a few philosophies from Udada. So I selected two, one which speaks directly to women, and the other one is more of leadership and aimed at the youth. And this was deliberate for the segment, which includes the youth. Freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. The youth of today, the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. This is all borrowed from Dr. Nelson Mandela. Udata understood that democracy requires equal participation and total emancipation. And he consistently highlighted the importance of education as key to unlocking the potential of women, and further emphasizes that true human spirits rights require us to overcome poverty and the chains of oppression faced by women. Therefore, science and innovation must serve humanity and not only technological advancement. Science must protect human rights. Therefore, science should advance equality, dignity, justice, and inclusion. In summary, as we commemorate Nelson Mandela International Day, we honor a leader who understood that freedom without dignity, equality, and justice is incomplete. There is always the gender question in science. Where does it fit in? Ingenaphi ngesiXhosa. So the why gender equality matters, and I like that the previous speaker, Prof. Tulio de Oliveira, touches on inclusivity and the importance of diversity, which I also just go further on. Inclusive science produces better science. I think we've all spoken to this. Diversity is not simply about fairness, but rather a concept that can improve creativity, innovation, and research quality. And I remember again in my head the slides that Prof had, where you could see that there is much more impact and the quality of the research improves with different research spectrums. Therefore, gender equality is essential for better science, for the human rights, for economic growth, for sustainable development, and all the other pointers that I list there. However, my reflections today, they are more informed, they're not informed by gender alone or social justice alone, but also by research that I conducted for my master's, which was titled Gender Dynamics in South African Astrophysics, a case study of the South African Astronomical Observatory. And through that research, I explored how institutional cultures within science shape who gets to participate, whose knowledge is recognized. Trust me, there is a hierarchy in knowledge production, and who ultimately benefits from scientific advancements. What it examined was gender, how it plays out in institutional cultures, the role of the leadership within those institutions, inclusion or exclusion, or lack thereof of the inclusion, and scientific participation. And for me, that experience reinforced an important lesson, that science is not or is never only about technology. It is also about people, it is about power, and it is about justice. So my master's demonstrated that scientific institutions often see themselves as objective and neutral. However, institutional cultures can still produce inequalities through everyday practices, norms, and power relations. Therefore, human rights must be part of scientific excellence and not served as just an afterthought. So some of my insights that I share, this is what the research found. Some of the things that, or the themes that emerged. Imposter syndrome, the leaky pipeline, which is basically a slippery slope, challenges with work-life balance, organizational matters, culture matters, and everything else in between. But one important finding from my research was that exclusion is not always deliberate. Sometimes it's embedded within the organizational culture, the traditions at play, the leadership style, the recruitment processes, the promotion practices, and assumptions about who belongs in the space, who owns the science, who belongs in science. I found that scientific institutions may unintentionally reproduce hierarchies based on gender, race, and class, despite commitments to transformation, which we speak about on a daily basis. I argue that innovation cannot flourish where people feel excluded. So some of the barriers that are facing women in STEM. During my fieldwork at the South African Astronomical Observatory, which also happens to be an observatory in Cape Town, participants consistently illustrated how unequal access to opportunities limited innovation and participants. The issue was never about their ability or inability to do the work. I'm talking astrophysicists, I'm talking astronomers, I'm talking professors, I'm talking doctors that I got to interview who shared their experiences and insights with me across 3 different institutions, which was the SAO, University of the Western Cape, and University of Cape Town. It was about recognition. The issues were about recognition, it was about access, it was about institutional culture. And throughout the research, I concluded that increasing numbers alone does not necessarily mean meaningful transformation if organizational cultures remain unchanged. Because if that were the case, then these people would not even experience or know the phenomenon of what imposter syndrome is, or start to have complaints around the slippery slope where, yes, the sciences or STEM has included, maybe on paper, them within the field. However, retaining them is something else, because the environment usually is not conducive to them staying. So they end up dropping out. You have at the beginning a high number of registrations where the intake you see by race, by number of women. There is an intake and inclusion seemingly of minority groups. However, as time goes by, the system slowly loses those numbers. So it's back to square one. Therefore, diversity should not be viewed as charity. It strengthens scientific excellence. So those were the barriers, and basically what I argued, that we might have, or we might work and say we are contributed towards, and use the terms of inclusion and diversity. However, in order for diversity to be meaningful and to strengthen scientific excellence, then it must be done the correct way. Research insights continued. We say that scientific excellence alone does not guarantee inclusion, and this is what I've just mentioned, because though there are women in the space, that are doing the work. However, the conditions are not the same. So representation alone is insufficient. Women must also experience equal leadership opportunities, equal research funding, safe workplaces, and recognition of their intellectual contributions. One of the things that I found is that in terms of safe workplaces, there is a culture within astronomy where drinking is very much part of the game. There was Wildfig and Riverside. These were clubs or pubs, if you may call it. However, not everyone can have access or equal enjoyment into those spaces because it is a culture within astronomers. They don't usually take lunch. They are always busy on site. However, after hours, which is usually very late, we have women whose primary burden is to be a caregiver at home and to take care of the domestic affairs in the household. So they have to go home early. They cannot be part or entertained in the work life or after work social gatherings. So this automatically excludes that group. There were different religions which this practice clashes with, such as Muslims. They do not associate with drinking or the drinking culture. So this automatically excluded them because they don't drink. This also then disadvantages women because this is a male-dominated space where drinking is part of the culture. You find that women talk about encounters of sexual harassment that are known in the space. However, you cannot really be vocal about these things because it happens late at night at a space where we are not in the office, and it is part of the job. I mean, part of the job meaning that it is the culture where drinking is encouraged. This is how we socialize. However, women are usually worse off when it comes to this experience. Now, mentioning the youth. Innovation begins with curiosity, and curiosity came up just now. Yes, Prof. Tulio mentions to encourage. Yes, he said he's here to encourage curiosity. And I found that it's very important to be curious because what birthed gender dynamics in South African astrophysics, even for me, was curiosity. During the first year of my master's, we were invited to a site visit at the observatory. So we went to observe the objects there, be it your square kilometer array, the observation, I'm talking big tools, machinery, to observe things I didn't know. And for me, I felt out of space in the sense that coming from a social sciences, humanities background, I've entered a world that I really do not feel I belong in. What is this? And even the dress code, everything. Little did I know that in that moment was, or during my observations of feeling out of place, was actually a seed being planted of a preliminary feminist analysis of the space, because that's ultimately what happened. We got back, we were asked to write about the experience. So I wrote a blog essay, which was graded 85%. So this is when I was approached, and my supervisor said, how about you do your master's on the observatory? And the rest is history. So it all starts with a seed. Prof. Yes, Blumenthal he mentioned something about, yes, he says you are asking the right questions. So any question is important. That is the starting point. If you have a question, and for me, it's always been, if something bothers me, if something does not sit well with me, then there is something, there's a problem. So investigate it. And that is my motivation for the youth. Be curious. It's good to be curious. You never know where you might land, the impact you might make. As the slides say, many of today's young people end up being scientists, young innovators. So that was that's what I'm encouraging. One observation that emerged from my research was that scientific knowledge has often privileged Western perspectives while overlooking African knowledge systems. And I like that the previous speaker mentions very well the importance of deploying diverse and indigenous communities into investigating or knowledge production. Knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems are very much excellent reservoirs of knowledge production. Indigenous ways of knowing matter. So inclusive innovation means recognizing that knowledge is produced in many places. They are produced in universities, they're produced in laboratories, communities, indigenous knowledge systems, and at the center of it all, lived experience. Excuse me. And in that way, science becomes stronger when multiple knowledge systems or traditions are respected. But we must also be mindful that an investment needs to be made. We must invest in girls in STEM, the youth in STEM. We must invest in rural innovation, indigenous knowledge systems, as I've alluded, digital inclusion, ethical artificial intelligence. We all spoke about artificial intelligence and that it's here to stay. Inclusive research environments, safe workplaces, and I cannot stress this enough. I also mentioned human resource, and I use the word watchdog for a purpose. I think in my experience of being a feminist scholar and a person who has a strong analytical eye or gender lens, I've come to realize that, yes, we have HR systems in place. However, when we talk of things such as or inclusivity, concepts of inclusivity, concepts such as diversity, concepts of gender, those are very complex concepts. And Prof. Blumenthal again speaks to that intelligence, that merit, that excellence. So you get people that do the job, or at least the basics. But there has not been enough investments made in terms of these fine nitty-gritties that matter. Inclusion matters. But how do you involve it within a scientific space? I say this because there is a case where the Basic Conditions of Employment Act at the South African Astronomical Observatory during my observations in 2014, I found that it was completely divorced. It was there somewhere on the wall, but it was a great discovery that I made way later because it was placed on some wall, some plaque, some metal inscripted thing on the wall, but it was on a different building altogether. They called it the administration building, and this is something I'll come back to. It was in the administration building. Administration building was far away from operations. And how these two were separated to this day still beats me. But now that I've gotten used and I know how these things play out, this has been common practice because you find that there are people that know the work or are limited, but not really clued up in terms of how gender works, how integration should play out, because there aren't the proper people to do the work or to understand, okay, this is how you do the analysis of the culture. This is how you integrate everything together. This is how the diverse systems merge together. Similarly to how I creatively, because I believe that was innovation where I married of two different sciences, the social sciences and the sciences, the pure sciences they call it, and came up with this. I had two supervisors. One was from the physics department at UWC and one was from the gender department. So I came innovatively into a matrimony with these two fields, and it ended up being a beautiful experience. But yes, the human resources needs to also look at finding people. I think there should always be a gender person in each and every field. I think this is what the National Gender Framework speaks of, but we are not there. I'll move. And just before I take on the call to action, lastly, technology should never widen inequality. Instead, it should improve it. It should improve healthcare. It should improve education. It should improve environmental sustainability, food security, gender equality, safety, access to justice. Innovation only succeeds when ordinary people experience tangible improvements in their daily lives. So my call to action, as per our slogan today, or the theme, the overarching theme, is that science, technology, and innovation is for everyone. And I couldn't agree with you more there. Science is strongest when everyone belongs in it. Therefore, together, we must remove barriers. We must invest in women and young girls. We must mentor young scientists. We must promote ethical innovation. We must strengthen human rights, and we must build inclusive institutions if at all we are to move a step in the right direction. And as Dr. Nelson Mandela reminded us, overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. Similarly, building an inclusive science or an inclusive scientific community is not simply about increasing numbers. It is about advancing human dignity. Science must not only discover new knowledge, it must also dismantle inequalities. Science must be closer to humanity. And I think we know, and the philosophy of Ubuntu exists for a reason. So if science, technology, and innovation are to fulfill Tata Mandela's vision, they must be guided not only by discovery, but by equity, justice, and inclusion. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that presentation. Absolutely important conversations that we need to have as a country. Doc, what makes conversations around gender and inclusion so delicate? Are we too sensitive, or are we not ready as a nation to have such conversations, specifically within, sectors such as science and technology?
Thank you for the question. It's a nice one. It's a nice one because I believe that a lot of people across the country are watching today, and they are mostly from the science field. The conversations are still being very much difficult within this discipline, this particular discipline. However, the conversations outside of this discipline are carrying on. I think a majority of people that speak or are pro diversity, pro equality, pro inclusion have long been having these conversations. I guess it's not quite audible. And that is why I'm saying the science field is not advanced in that sense. And I think this is one moment of reflection for everyone that's here who is in the space. The research was funded by NRF, thankfully, and so did my PhD. So this is the part of this is where I get to be passionate. I did something. It's there for you guys to access. If you wanted to use those recommendations, because I went into the space, I am saying how these conversations are important, how they need to be held, because we are saying that who does the sciences? It is humanity, people, souls are in it. It's not the technical equipment and everything else. Therefore, these are conversations. They need, or the field needs to invest in the human resources that actually can carry the conversations forward to say, okay, how institutionally, this is where we are still behind. We've made major life-changing discoveries, advancements, but where we are lacking is the core, the heart, the soul, where humanity collides with the sciences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last question. Doc, if there's a young girl from Bond Village or from Skukune Village watching you today and wondering whether she belongs in science, what would you say to her?
Oh, Baba, you belong. You belong everywhere you want to fit in. I think more than anything, these are conversations that your ordinary Nomhle, Tombencha, Tembelihle from the village should aspire to. My background was from an inferior school because it was an Indian school, it was not white. So for me to, and before that, it was a Xhosa school, Xhosa speaking, Xhosa everything, because we did not have the means. We simply did not afford. My mother could not. But you would not see it. I don't embody that. So we move. You build yourself. You can be what you want to be. In layman terms, they say fake it until you make it. But on the real serious side now, I think apart from the fact that the person might lack resources wherever they are, but there are other means of trying to tap into knowledge or resources. Some are WhatsApp, it's cheaper. Everyone owns a cell phone now. You tap into, or you find, you research whoever it is, and you just write whatever message or whatever you need help with. You reach out to people. You find ways of being creative. We're talking innovation. That was just a basic example, but you don't stop dreaming, girl. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we also have one common denominator. I also went to a predominantly Indian school. And I
You see?
remember my principal, Mr. Binu, he would say to me, Vokosi, you are very, very smart, but you're lazy.
Mm.
I need you to pull up your socks. You must work very, very hard. So it reminded me
You
of the
even know
golden
how
old
you
days.
even dropped the accent. Thank you, Ngosi, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies
All
and
right.
gentlemen, we now turn to a special innovation spotlight where we will be hearing the remarkable story of a young South African who is using technology to tackle some of our country's greatest challenges, which is gender-based violence. So joining us is Miss Buhlali Mphahlele, the founder and CEO of Mphahlele Alerts, an inventor of the alerting earpiece, an innovation safety solution designed to combat gender-based violence and human trafficking. Butlali, good morning, good afternoon rather. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm well, and how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for making time for us. I am eager to have a conversation with you about your innovative approach to gender-based violence and human trafficking. But I do know that you have a presentation that you want to take us through first. So over to you, my lady.
Thank you so much. Greetings, how's it last? It's Kapasi. My name is Mphahlele. I am the founder and CEO of Mphahlele. I'm the inventor of a letting you piece. And
Butlali, we are losing you. Hello, Butlali.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're losing you. Your network is breaking.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Perfect, perfect. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. I was just saying that my name is Mphahlele Bohlale. I am the CEO and founder of Alerting Earpiece. I am the inventor of Alerting Earpiece, and I am also a student, an IT student studying IT and business systems. Besides that, I am a profound speaker, a keynote speaker who actually keynoted on different platforms. To mention a few, the G20 Youth Summit, I was keynoting alongside the Minister of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande. And I also had the privilege to keynote at the Singularity Summit 2025 for South Africa. All right. Let me go straight into, to also mention, ladies and gentlemen, it is with good honor and privilege to announce that I've been awarded the 2026 Forbes Women Africa Young Achiever Award. So yeah, before we can continue, I just wanted to also mention that. It is also an honor to be here today, to be one of the speakers today as we commemorate the Nelson Mandela Day under the theme of Science for Human Rights. Going straight to the next slide. I also love to mention this, that, when people think and hear my story that I am an inventor, they often, ask me where my passion for science began. And, my answer always surprises them because they be thinking that, my journey began in a laboratory, but it didn't begin in a laboratory. It began in my living room. In the next slide, it will definitely show that it began in the rural villages of Limpopo. Growing up in the rural villages of Limpopo, my father had one rule, and one rule only, that, every evening at 7 p.m., we have to watch the news. And it's funny how, from watching the news to being the news, the next slide shows that I've been one of the people who have been, interviewed about the same specific invention that I used to get most of my information from the news at 7 p.m. to being on the news to talk about the same invention. That was an honor. So every evening at 7 o'clock, we would definitely watch the news. And he always told us that, little knowledge kills. And at that time, I thought he simply wanted us to just, stay informed. But looking back now, I'm realizing that he was actually teaching me to observe, to also pay attention, and to try to understand our country before trying to change it. Night after night, if you look at the right hand there at the top of this specific slide, you will see that there are different pictures there. So night after night, I watch stories about gender-based violence, human trafficking, crime, and families whose lives had changed forever. And that was because of this tragic challenges that we are facing in South Africa. In the next slide. As I grew up, as I grew older, I joined the community radio station and a community show called Boom Talk at a community radio station called GLFM, Greater Leguagomo FM. And I was only 12 years old. So you can already think about, the mindset shifting, because at 12 years old, I was, already exposed to the challenges that are affecting young people, and also challenges that are affecting, South Africa as a whole. So every week we used to discuss the challenges that are affecting our youth, and also how we can best help them and come up with strategies as youth and also just children in South Africa to make sure that we eradicate those challenges, or even just come up with strategies to make South Africa a better place. So we actually invited experts and shared advice, and also encouraged, listeners to seek help in the challenges that they were facing. And, something that always continued to trouble me is the fact that the very same people that we kept calling and advising would call back and seek for more strategies and seek for more solutions on the challenges that they were having. So I decided to look into the fact that, okay, the conversations that we are having are important, but awareness alone doesn't always protect someone when they need help the most. So I asked myself the what if question. At the beginning of our discussion today, the MC mentioned that when you look at the world today, when you see the solutions that have been implemented in our day-to-day lives, and when you look into the ideas that are one of the best ideas up to this day, those people started with the most simplest question, and that question is what if? Starting by asking yourself, what if, is one of the best questions to help in terms of getting a solution for the problem that you're having. So I asked myself the what if question. I asked myself, what if instead of only talking to the listeners about the problem, I could build a solution? That's when I joined the Science Club, and later entered the ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists. And that's where I began to see science as something more than just experiments, something more than just listening, and also looking at instructions and doing research. I looked into science as something that could be used as a way of protesting for our day-to-day lives, for our generation to be specific, because back then people like Rolihlahla, Mandela used to protest with words, and today we can just take from where they left by making sure that we build solutions and build things that are practical, that will help show that they did not just fight, and their efforts didn't go in vain. So today, science is what can be used to make a practical example that humans can be had and solutions can solve real problems. So yes, like I mentioned, science is not just something that you can look into as, experiments. It is about asking better questions. It is about observing. It is about listening and also researching and refusing to accept that suffering is just normal. The journey led to the development of electing earpiece through the Mphahlele alerts, and I managed to develop the alerting earpiece, which is actually a device that helps eradicate the chances of human trafficking, gender-based violence, and other social-related issues. So when the victim is being victimized, what they do is there's a button on the earring that is disguised as the surface of the earring and the design of the earring. So what they do is press the button, it opens up, capture the face of the perpetrator, and also take a few recordings. One of our distinguished speakers today mentioned that victims stories are important. However, evidence makes the story to be even stronger. So when it captures the face of the perpetrator and takes the recording, it provides even stronger information and stronger evidence to show that indeed this incident has occurred. So alerting earpiece is an innovation aimed at strengthening personal safety and also eradicating the chances of human trafficking. So after the recordings, what will happen is it will take that information, send it to connected devices. It be your family members, it be your the people that are connected to your devices, and also the government officials. And they will use that information to track your whereabouts and also assist you in that danger. So alerting earpiece, it is an innovation, aimed at strengthening personal safety, especially in the context of gender-based violence and human trafficking. But this journey was, far from easy. The hardest part wasn't my rural background. It was funding. It was finding the right materials and where to source them. It was convincing, the people to take a young girl serious with an idea too big for her small world. Some whom I regarded back then as experts within the career path that I was embarking on told me that, my idea would never amount to anything. But I was determined to make sure that I help the victims of gender-based violence, and I kept on realizing and also reminding myself why I started. So I looked into the fact that people sometimes are just imposing their difficulties and challenges on my journey. So I decided to take the leap of faith and start with what I have. I chose determination. I built my first prototype, as you can see it there. This is actually my third one. I built my first one, I built my second one, and then finally built this third one with recyclable materials. I didn't have much, but I've learned to start with what I have. I didn't wait for the perfect conditions. I just started with what I have. And, my mother believed in me and my father kept on encouraging me. But one person that made a particular difference for my journey was my science teacher, Mr. Molope. He didn't encourage me. He didn't just, encourage me, but he invested in his, in the entire project. He invested his time, he invested, his strength, and also challenged my research and strengthened my thinking. Mr. Mulope is the first person at the right corner. If you look into the right corner, there next to the students, that's Mr. Malope. And I'll always, always appreciate him, because if it wasn't for him, I believe I would have gave up on electing APs and we wouldn't have this beautiful concept today. So he was one person who literally made sure that I don't stop believing in the why. And sometimes, believing in a young person means more than just encouragement. It means walking alongside them. And today, when we speak of science for human rights, I think about how science becomes a human right when it protects dignity, when it creates opportunities, when it makes vulnerable people safer. And that's why I say science is the new way of protesting. Where previous generations marched against injustice, as I've mentioned, Mr. Rolihlahla Mandela, we can design solutions that confront injustice every day. Innovation allows us to transform concerns into action. That, to me, is science saving humanity. Today, my work extends beyond developing technology. Together with, a few fellow students, we have started the initiative of exposing young students to tech and also developing technology. We have also exposed them to careers as well that they dream about and have never experienced. So me and my friends here in college, we have decided to come up with this initiative where we have students from various faculties and we explore ways in which we can explore the career paths that students want to go into. So what we do is sit down with students and also propose these invitations to different experts within those different faculties and ask them to allow students to spend a day in a life, in their specified career paths. So if a student wants to be a business analyst, we want them to spend time with one. If they dream of being in the faculty of logistics and engineering and science and also technology, we want to see those careers in real life. We expose them to people who are already doing what they do so that students can also see whether this is what they need to do for the entire life or they actually are not sure of if this is what they want to do. So sometimes we be facing, financial struggles in terms of, just catering the trip of them getting to those companies that we have proposed. But bit by bit, we're getting there one day at a time and one career at a time. Because you cannot become, what you've never seen. So this is one of the best initiatives that I believe I have ever came up with together with my friends. Human rights are not only about the rights to safety. They are also about the rights to opportunity, to the right to dream, the right to discover your potential, and the right to believe that your background does not determine your future. As I conclude, I want to leave everyone here with a challenge Whether you are a scientist, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a policymaker, a student, or a young person sitting quietly with an idea in your notebook or wherever you are, go back to your community, look carefully, ask yourself, what problem am I willing to solve? If you have an old idea hidden in a diary, revisit it. If you need knowledge, start researching. If you need partners, write proposals. If you need guidance, ask the relevant questions. But above all, start with what you have. If you didn't hear anything that I've said today, please listen carefully to this. Let this be one of the things that you take from me, to start with what you have, because tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. I truly, truly believe that Madiba started, and that's why we are able to celebrate him today. He prepared for today. He prepared for this future that we live in. 10 years from now, I don't simply want people to remember an invention. I want them to look into my journey and say, she started with what she has and she never stopped building solutions. And if every one of us leaves this webinar committed to solving even one problem in our community through science, technology, and innovation, then we will not only honor Nelson Mandela's legacy, we will continue it. With those words, I thank you so much.
Butlali, you are a tangible representation of a dream realized. From Limbs to Forbes magazine, what a journey. And in most cases, we as people, we only see the end result. We don't know much about the journey in between. What kind of challenges did you face in your journey to developing this innovative technology?
Besides finding, as a rural girl, exposure is one of the things that have hindered, the speed of electing APs. And with the initiative that I've began with some of my friends here at the university level, I believe that I am also trying to, expose other young students and give them exposure to the career paths that they are, thinking of embarking on. And I believe I can do more, but with the little that I'm having, I'm starting with the little that I'm having. So the challenge that I believe I have, had or encountered is exposure, because with funding, yes, but if you start with what you have, the right people will see you. And sometimes it takes time. Trust me, I know it really takes time for some people to find you. But exposure brings knowledge, exposure brings, skills, and exposure brings a lot of awareness. So exposure is one thing that made, alerting APs to slow down a bit.
Wow, love that. We live in a country where people often would underlook your quintil 1, 2, and 3 schools to say that, man, those are just schools in the township or schools in the rural communities. They can't compete with your Ivy League schools. And here you are, right? From those communities, and you are championing forward an initiative that is literally saving lives. And I saw a picture of you participating in the ESCOM Science Expo. So how important is it for high school learners to partake in such science competitions?
It is very vital. It is very vital as it also, exposes one to how the world wants them to think. And also it I think it also shifts one's mindset in terms of to compete with the world, because in this science fairs you get exposed to students across, Africa and also across the world as well, if you succeed to the international level. And for to answer the fact that you mentioned that other people still think, quintile 1, 2, 3 schools are where people cannot really compete. But when you look into today's world and when you look into the innovations, grassroots innovation is one of the best innovations that are holding South Africa. And if you go into the rurals right now, you will be amazed, of how youngsters are thinking. All they need is just exposure. All they need is just to be put in the right platform for them to explore and also present their own advantages and skills. Because sometimes I be, sitting with my friends and also my peers back home, and I be asking myself whether South Africa is ready for the kind of rural individuals that are there back in the rurals, because the ideas that come from the rurals are ideas that most of the times are like as rural individuals, as innovators from the rural areas. Most of the times we are the ones who experience the problems that we are having, like for example gender-based violence. It is there in the it is there in the townships and the urban areas. But if you look further into it, the statistics show that in the rural areas, that's when we are having most of the crime rates. And seeing this at a practical lens, I think it makes rural innovators to think practically, to think about how to best make solutions effective and also make them to work, and also for lack of a better word, but I'd say it also just solve the problems that they are experiencing, or they are having within the rural areas. So I believe that there's more people in the rural areas that are more innovative and they just need exposure. They just need, the right people, the right platforms, and the the level of resources that we are having in the rurals is not enough to showcase the talents that are there in the rural areas. But if we can have more platforms that go to the rural areas and look for grassroots innovation, I believe the world can also be a better place, and those those solutions can also contribute to the problems that affect the economy of South Africa.
Butlali, you are the one that we have been waiting for, and I echo the sentiments of Dr. Jade Tobin. And she says, your name will be written in the history books, Butlali. You were born already. And that is so true. Um, Mainly because you identified the problem and you found a solution to that problem. And you never allowed your circumstances or where you come from to determine where you can go. In 2013, there was a case where a 7-year-old girl child was raped at a school somewhere in Limpopo. I won't mention the name of the school. And ever since then, to this day, we're still fighting it, right? That case. So had this technology been available at the time, maybe the outcome would have been different. And I'm grateful that we have people like you who saw a need in society and you did something about it. In closing, Butlali, we all have a why, you know. I have my why for my existence, the things that I do, and how I do the things that I do. So what is your why? What is your why?
I truly believe, looking at everything that I've achieved and experienced, my why is serving the community with pride. From, the age of 12 years old, I've been, a radio presenter, trying to find strategies and also help young people with the problems that they were having. And then, now having a letting APs and also having this um, initiatives where I'm trying to help students to explore and also see what happens in their career path, that their career paths that they want to embark on. I'm also a tutor at this university that I'm at, also trying to just teach students on business management and how to manage, their companies at well. So I believe, and I truly believe, my why is to serve the community with pride, and also just to leave a mark like Nelson Mandela did, to leave a mark and, also make sure that when I leave this world, I have something that I've um, contributed to the economy of South Africa with.
Butlali, you are a tutor, you are an innovator, you are a student. What can't you do, eh? You are literally the one that we've been waiting for. Thank you so much for your time. You know, throughout today's webinar, we spoke so much about human rights. Actually, I just got a question that somebody wants me to ask you, Butlali. The question is, what is the role of science clubs in schools and learners' participations in those science clubs?
Science clubs are very important, are very vital, because I truly believe that if we didn't have a science club back in SA van der Merwe, we wouldn't have a Bohlali today as an inventor. So you can see that, those clubs helps us in terms of thinking about how we can contribute to the national goals, and also try to help in terms of coming up with solutions. So science clubs are vital, I believe, and truly, truly believe that each and every school should have a science club. And it will also be good to have, teachers like Mr. Molope, who would invest in, students, and not only just focus on curriculum matters, but extracurricular matters also, play a vital role in students, and also trying to explore what students can do besides or just after the curriculum matters. So science clubs are very vital, as they also shift the thinking of one, because I'm not so sure if I should mention this. I started being exposed to research plans back in high school, and now using that in varsity, it becomes something different, because I'm already aware of what to offer the lecture. I'm already aware of what they expect from me. I'm already aware of, what I can do to get 100%. So it actually exposes other kids to the next level, the higher institutional level curriculum. So yeah, I believe science clubs are better, and they are a way of trying to see how we can help students to be the best versions of themselves besides, the academics.
Absolutely. Science clubs are the incubators of innovation. And I always champion for those, and specifically learners to partake in them. Because, sometimes when you are so confined to the educational curriculum, you inhibit yourself from dreaming bigger. But when you collaborate with other people and you form part of those science clubs, you see things in a different way and you dream bigger and you're able to expand your vision, you're able to expand your way of thinking. So those are absolutely important. And I need to meet Mr. Mpahlele. Is it Mr. Mpahlele?
Yes, it's Mr. Molope, the
Mr.
teacher.
Mr. Mulope, I need to meet him one of these days. And I mean, the contribution and the mark that he has left on you will last a lifetime. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. This is the incredible, ladies and gentlemen, Bohlali Mpahlele. So, throughout today's webinar, we spoke about human rights, we spoke about justice, and we also spoke about inclusion, innovation. But at the end of the day, the real question is, how do we make all of this, every single conversation that we had today, and science, how do we make it meaningful to the lives of ordinary South African citizens? Because if science is to fulfill its purpose, it needs to change people's lives. It needs to create jobs. It needs to feed families. And it also needs to restore dignity. And that is where innovation finds its true purpose. Our final presentation for the day speaks exactly to this, using science, technology, and innovation to reduce poverty, inequality, and exclusion. Unfortunately, Prof. Edwin was unable to join us in person. However, he recorded a special video for us to enjoy and learn from at this moment. So Kenneth, you may play it.
Good morning. As I was
Right, as I wait for Kenneth to sort out the technical issues, if you do have any questions for the speakers of the day, please feel free to type them on the chat box. I will definitely look into them a little bit later on. Yeah, and then, so please do type in the questions and then, we'll tackle them a little bit later on. But I do also want to remind you of the importance. Today we are celebrating, the National Nelson Mandela Day. Always do good, because if you do good, good will come back to you. I believe in Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal but in the opposite direction reaction. So if you do good, good will definitely come back to you. So I believe that the video should be ready by now. Thank you, Kenneth.
Good morning. As I was asked to share my ideas with regard to science and human rights, I think this is a very wonderful topic that spans the entire spectrum of people's rights and how science could help to assist in upholding human rights in communities. As a scientist, I find this topic to be quite interesting because in many cases, as scientists, we spend time in the laboratory, in the spaces where we conduct the research. However, we are never in a position to look into this element, which is quite important. But as I was reading and trying to make sense of this topic, I found it that it's very much relevant. For instance, we read that indeed science advances have made it possible that many human rights that were overlooked in many communities are now being upheld because of scientific evidence. There are several examples where scientific advances have helped to uphold human rights. For instance, we can think of rights to health, where, for instance, many people are alive today. And as you may know, everybody has a right to live. And science was on the forefront to come up with discoveries that helps these people to get access to medication and therapies and be on the forefront of receiving aid from scientific discoveries. There's also protection to environment. For instance, in some of the research that we are seeing, people have rights to access to clean water. And it's through scientific discoveries that we see that many technologies that are used to clean water were developed in order to assist people to have access to clean water, something that was never a case previously. As we also move to another example, we can look at the access to food security. Everybody has a right to access to food and secure food for that matter. Science has been on the forefront to assist in sustainable agriculture and also help communities to grow their own food and for the entire world to meet food demand. And we have seen that human rights have been upheld because of these scientific discoveries. One other example which is quite very interesting is the support to justice and accountability. As you may know, in our communities we have a lot of injustices in terms of criminal activities that somehow they impede human rights, and some of them go unsolved because of lack of technologies and infrastructure that could assist in helping to solve criminal activity. So science, as we know it, has helped in development of forensic technologies and other things that could assist the communities to solve some of the most sophisticated criminal activities. We know very well that in our spaces such as airports, there's a movement of illicit drugs that if there were no technologies that were put in place, these were going to filter down to communities, and these are a big challenge because they even pose risk to human life, and there's nothing that could be of major concern if other than things that could impede human life. Science also helps to give people access to dignity. Let me give you, for instance, we come from a very bad history and still persists in other parts of the world where people were discriminated based on their racial characteristics. And it was through science that has proven that all human race is one race. And then there are no fundamental differences from scientific discoveries between people of different races. However, if that was not the case, you may know from the cases of countries such as South Africa that through misguided and misinformed narratives, people adopted things that ended up impeding or being a problem to other people's human rights. So in conclusion, one can then say that science has been very much instrumental in upholding human rights. As a scientist myself, I try by all means to forecast what is in the future, and my own work is involving finding alternative means to help people develop pharmacological alternatives that could be used to solve diseases that we may face in the future. Malnutrition is one of them. Antimicrobial resistance is one of them, where we look into plants to find ways to treat these diseases and conditions that could be of great concern going forward. With that, I would like to thank you, and I think this will be a great initiative, and I believe that people will learn a great deal and start to protect science. But I should also mention before I conclude that there are issues involving science that are a problem to human rights. For instance, when science is not done in an ethical way, especially now in the era of genetic manipulation, in the era of data, things can go the other way. But I believe with the examples that I've given above, when things are done right, science could be a very good how can I put it? It should be a very good platform whereby human rights can be upheld. Thank you very much.
You know, when we say that science, technology, and innovation are for everyone, truly we mean it. It is for every single human being on earth, whether you are from Bon Village, where I come from, or you are from Sandhurst, wherever you are in the world or in the country, science, technology, and innovation is definitely for you. And through the power of science and technology, we were able to play this video for you and for myself and to learn from Prof. Mandela. So thank you so much, Prof. And I look forward to engaging with him later on in the month as we have something planned out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's webinar. But as we conclude, I think for me, one thing really, really, really stands out, and that science is at its optimum best when it improves people's lives, when it creates opportunities, and when it creates or restores dignity. Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." May these words remind us that today's greatest scientific breakthroughs begin with the courage to ask bold questions, to pursue bold ideas, and to work together for the common good. As we continue to celebrate the National Nelson Mandela Day and, of course, his legacy, let us continue using science, technology, and innovation to build a just, inclusive, and democratic South Africa. Before I completely wrap up, I would like to get closing remarks from our speakers of the day, and I will start with Advocate Lefuno. Your closing remarks? Right, as I wait for Advocate to switch on his mic, let me quickly look through the...
Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, as part of the closing remarks, I would like to thank the participant for gracing this occasion and also listening to the presentations. Indeed, science has a future, and technology and also innovation. Science is also part of human rights. Today we celebrate Nelson Mandela Day internationally. We are giving our 67 minutes to humanity and also to what Tata Madiba believed in, which are Ubuntu, social justice, transparency, accountability, and also human dignity. I think those are the few words, Program Director, since you are ending the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate. Prof. Ryan?
Thank you very much, Program Director. So the closing remarks that I would make are the following. So as we commemorate Nelson Mandela Day, let us remember that justice, dignity, and human rights depend on truth, accountability, and service. Forensic science plays a pivotal role in this mission. By giving a voice to those who can no longer speak, we help uncover the truth, uphold justice, protect the innocent, and learn lessons that can save lives. May we honor Madiba's legacy by using science in the service of humanity, ensuring that every life matters, every death is treated with dignity, and every truth brings us closer to a more just and compassionate society. Thank you for this honor to be here today. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much, Prof. And then Prof. Tulio. Okay, I'm not sure if Prof is still with us. I will just move over to Dr. Thembelihle. Dr. Thembelihle, any closing remarks from your end? Okay. In the meantime, I will just swiftly move over to, of course, Bohlale. Okay. I guess that we are having connectivity issues. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolutely amazing morning. Oh, yes, hello.
Connectivity issues. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been absolutely amazing morning.
Sorry, you're breaking.
Hello.
Yes,
Sorry, you're breaking.
Can you
Prof.
hear me? Perfect.
Let's go to Prof first, and then I'll come to Bohlale. Prof. Yes, Prof. Okay, Bohlale. Bohlale, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, you're
Am
breaking.
I audible?
You're breaking a little bit.
Okay. You can hear me now perfectly.
Perfectly. Yeah.
All right. So, as my last remarks, I'd love to challenge everyone here to not let this webinar just be, another conversation, and just use this webinar as, motivation to go back and start with what you have. Let it be the beginning of, a solution, a new solution. And yeah, just go back and revisit the ideas that you had, and remember that the change doesn't become huge change without the initial effort. So you have to start with what you have, and start, and truly believe in, what you have, and don't let the naysayers, try to dim your light. Just use what you have, and remember, that what you have is, exactly what you need to start with what you have. And yeah, try to contribute to the economy of South Africa with what you have, and think about what Mandela would say about you playing small. So stop playing small and start with what you have. It is important, it is vital, it is what you need.
Leave the world better than you found it. I love that. Prof. Tulio, are you back? Okay, Dr. Thembelihle. Okay, I think somebody is trying to connect. Yes, we can hear you. Yes, Prof. All right. I think we can wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. On the behalf of the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation, the NRF SASTA, and of course, our distinguished guest. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bukosi Mashele. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to serve as your MC or your programs director for the day. Hey, Mara, the flu is killing me. Okay. But the show goes on. I now invite the organizers to deliver the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Thank you so much. Over to the organizers for the closing remarks. All right, on behalf of the organizers, thank you so much for making yourself available this Saturday morning. And thank you so much for your contributions. I've been monitoring the chat box. Yes,
Bukosi.
yes, yes, yes.
It's Shadrach. Yes, Shadrach. Sorry, I thought Lynette would come in or Dr. Masebe, but I see that they are not here. But I want to appreciate, I really want to appreciate the speakers, the research that you have done, what you have shared with South Africa today in celebration of Tata Nelson Mandela. We really appreciate your contribution and Bukosi for driving this. We do appreciate your contribution as well. Thank you very much. And that's what I can say. And it was a great session, to be honest. It was a very great session. And one is actually not just being part of the organizers, but one of the participants in listening to your views, listening to your research, and how this research can take the world further. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Shadrach. And I will close the session by saying this. Um, it always seems impossible until it is done. In the words of Nelson Mandela, have a fantastic Saturday afternoon. And remember, do good. It is the Nelson Mandela Day and happy National Science Month. Until the next webinar, God bless. Bye-bye.